Welcome back to another episode of the Shawn Johnson Show. Today I want to talk about the importance of consistency when it comes to sustaining long-term permanent change. We all understand that consistency is absolutely essential, but what we do not do and what you absolutely need to do is ask yourself the question, what's going to get in the way of consistency? You see, I do not care why a person starts a diet. You've probably started and stopped and started and stopped and started and stopped a diet a million times over throughout your adult life. What you should care about is, what are the tripping points? Why do you put the diet plan down? Why do you put the exercise plan down? And then put a plan in place to avoid going off the track. This journey will resemble a roller coaster ride more than anything else. And so let's take a look at that roller coaster ride now. And then I want to bring on a very special guest to talk a little bit about what she did from day one that allowed her to be successful over time. So there are several points along this roller coaster ride, and a few of which we really need to understand, because those are the points where you might go off the tracks and quit, crash and burn. Step one is uninformed optimism. That's the honeymoon phase. We're excited, we're doing something new, our brain loves novelty. There might be a little bit of nervous energy, but overall, we're really proud that we're doing this new thing. This is a great time to write down why it even matters that you stay the course over the long haul. Write down your vision. Write down what it has cost you up to this point and how proud you are at the fact that you're finally taking the time to do something about it, because you haven't gotten to point two yet where you realize this is going to be a lot harder than I thought. It's not necessarily going to happen on my timeline. I'm no longer distracted by the newness and the excitement from day one. And now life is coming back online. And I'm really wanting to default back to my creature comforts. This is a great time to explore your life outside of food. Maybe pick up a hobby. Maybe do something that you've always been passionate about, but you've never taken the time to do, because it's not the time to get creative with the diet, which is what most people start to do here. They start going, this diet, it's kind of boring, and you're looking for entertainment from your food. That is not the right place to do it, because inadvertently, you might throw yourself off track. This is also why it's important to have a dietary strategy that focuses on the bare minimum that's going to lead you the maximum amount of results, because our willpower is limited. And so we don't want to be wasting energy on minutia. You want to focus on the 20% that's going to get you 80% of the results, not the 80% that's going to get you 20% of the results. This is also why it's important to understand how to strategically implement a cheat day on a regular basis, so that you're never feeling just overwhelmingly deprived, that you're never going to have your favorite foods ever again. Then we have step three. So step three, and again, you're going to be going through this again and again and again. Step three is when that emergency happens. Someone ends up in the hospital, God forbid, car accident, a death in the family, a divorce, a job loss. If you are breathing, you will experience emergencies. And if you do not have a plan in place, these emergencies will throw you off track and you will crash and burn and quit. But if you're prepared for it, if you know ahead of time that, right, I've got my emergency food kit stashed away in the car, don't even have to think about it, I can just execute it and then tend to the emergency. You've thought about what you're going to do on the way to the hospital. Then you can dig your heels in, hold the ground, and get back to a place of informed optimism. You now understand the challenges. They're going to come up. You're, shall we say, cautiously optimistic. So now I'd like to bring on a special guest, Kimberly Bell, who's been with me for quite some time now and has experienced amazing success in transforming her physical and mental and spiritual health over time. And I'd like her to share a little bit about how she addressed these things from day one, which is why she is so successful. So without further ado, let's bring on Kimberly Bell. And we're back with Kimberly Bell. Kimberly, today
How are you doing today?
I'm doing fabulous. How are you?
I'm great. Doing really great.
So today I want to talk about the importance of being prepared. And that is something that I want to highlight with you because you took this very seriously in the beginning.
I think it actually scared me.
Well, most
And that's not a bad thing. Sometimes we use fear to our advantage.
Now, it scared you at the beginning?
Yeah, I think it did, because I would see people do things that, get healthy or lose weight or whatever it was they were trying to do. And then 2 years later or 6 months later or whatever it might be, I see them and they look worse than when they started.
Yeah,
They fall off because something happened in their life that was a tragedy, or somebody passed away. There's a million excuses why it happens, but I didn't want to be one of those people.
So I often get a little nervous when I bring somebody on board and they're totally confident. Like, this is it. This time's going to be the magic time. This 101st time that they're starting a new diet, somehow going to be it. And if there's not a little bit, I was just talking about sort of the stages that people will come across throughout their journey on this roller coaster ride. And as you know, it is and has continued to be a roller coaster ride because you're a human living a human life.
Yep.
Well, in the beginning,
Exactly.
you don't have a little bit of that nervous energy. I mean, even going into a marriage, there's the excitement, you're excited about the new life
Yes.
you're going to share together, but there's also should be a little nervous energy because it's an important relationship, and know that there's work that's going to go into that. And those people that don't probably end up divorced, but that's another topic.
Yeah.
So,
but not very close to similar.
Right. Well, my point is that no matter what goal you're trying to accomplish in life, I don't care if it's financial, I don't care if it's health related, relationship related, this roller coaster ride is universal.
Yes.
So talking about the fact that, yeah, we've got the honeymoon phase, right? And that's the easy part, the kind of the starting the diet. We've all started and stopped a diet maybe 110 times within our adult life.
Yes.
And we all go into it, most people go into it with the understanding that without consistency, there will be no success. Right?
I agree with that 100%.
But
we were just talking about that with something else today that had to do with sports, a sports thing of somebody that I'm involved with.
Very few people then take that to the next step, which is to ask yourself the question, okay, if consistency is absolutely essential, well, then what's going to get in the way of consistency? And how can I put a plan in place to avoid falling off? So I want to talk about first stage.
I don't know if you remember that when I first started with you, I said, well, let's just say my husband went in the hospital and got very ill, and I had to run back and forth between there. And what am I going to do?
Well,
how am I going to deal with that? And how am I going to stop myself, number one, from not letting my emotions get in the way, from not letting whatever he's going through get in the way, from me trying to completely navigate my life differently? How do I stop myself from getting unhealthy when that's going on?
I do remember, and that's when I sent you this chart that they've already seen. I've done a little introductory session before you came on. So I sent you this roller coaster image, and I asked you to make a plan for that, and you took it seriously, and you did just that. Before we get into the husband gets in the hospital or you get in the hospital, and we'll talk about that.
Yeah,
because that's kind of like stage 3, crisis of, I call that the crisis of meaning stage, where we're either gonna dig our heels in because we did the prep work ahead of time, or we're gonna crash and burn and go off the tracks. But before that, like, what happens after the honeymoon phase? And generally that phase for us comes into play, generally, this is different per person, but after like the 6 weeks, where the newness wears off. So that novelty, that excitement, it's now gone. You've been at this for a little while, and you realize it's called the informed pessimism stage. And what that means is all of a sudden you realize that, gosh darn it, this is going to be harder than I thought. Right. And because the newness is gone, all of a sudden the volume on your life comes back up. You realize there's a lot of people that realize that, gosh, I've been kind of like feeding the void with food. I can't do that now. And I'm kind of dissatisfied. Some people, that's in their relationship. Some people are realizing, oh gosh, I got to prepare for retirement. Real life stuff starts coming back online that they start thinking about. And the default maybe once used to be food. And this is where I will see a pitfall where people start to attempt to get creative with their food because they're trying to find entertainment with their food. That will slowly trip people up. And how it usually happens is they end up consuming way more calories than they actually need unintentionally. I was wondering if you could speak to that, because I think in the past year, you've talked a little bit about being less creative instead of more creative.
Yes. I mean, yes and no, because I go through phases with that. Just because, and you know that I like to cook. It's a creative process to me, just like me making cookies is. And
well, that's what you
it
did.
kind of took that away a little bit in the beginning, but I knew in order for me to be okay with where I was going, I was going to have to simplify everything for a while. And I stayed that way for a long time, you know that. And now you know that I'm actively working on trying to redevelop recipes and things, because it still gives me my creative outlet that I need, but it's focused on what is healthy instead of just looking for a new recipe.
So I knew I was going to trip people up here with you, because generally what I tell people is that if you do not get to this point and default back to your old creature comforts, which is, I'm going to go back to the cookies, screw it, I'm going to have the bread tonight, screw it. If you don't do that, if you take a stop and you take a pause and you step back and ask yourself, what are the things that I enjoy doing? And this is where I'd encourage people to pick up the hobby. Now, yours just happened to be food, so that's why it's confusing with you, because that's not everybody's love.
Well, that was hard. I didn't make cookies almost for the whole entire first year.
Yeah.
Because I knew the best thing I could do was to stay away from them for right now. And to be honest with everybody, just so everybody understands this, the cookies are a creative outlet to me. I don't really eat them per se like most people would. If they were making cookies, they probably are eating them all the time. I don't eat my cookies because it's a artistic outlet to me. So the most I would be eating them if I was making them would be because I was changing a flavor or making something for a friend or something that I needed to taste them. I didn't make them for a year because I didn't want to find myself feeling like I needed to taste them. Yeah. Until I learned to be okay with making cookies without tasting them. And I can now. It's just, I have to trust myself that I'm doing the right thing.
This is generally where I'll encourage people, you know, if you were into arts and crafts, maybe once upon a time, and somehow life got in the way of you continuing with that hobby that you love so much, or maybe you love photography, or maybe you've always wanted to pick up a new language, like this is the perfect time to fully allow yourself to do those things. And what you're doing is bringing in the novelty, the newness, because our brain loves novelty. The brain loves new things. What's new, what's interesting. That's what got you through the beginning of the diet. It's not going to get you through this phase. So knowing that, how can we bring a sense of newness and creativity and fun back into the picture that doesn't necessarily revolve around food? In your case, it did, and that's fine too.
Yeah. But there are things that I did during that year to help me. And remember what I always tell everybody that I used to be a true minimalist, and somehow I lost that. And I don't know why, but I just did. And I wanted it back. but trying to find the time to do it was crazy. So that whole year I wasn't making cookies, doing things like that I normally did, developing recipes or looking for new recipes, all that stuff that I wasn't taking up space anymore. I used that to make my house lose weight with me.
Well, that's interesting.
And so I always tell everybody that when I started losing weight, my house was going to do it too.
I love
And
that.
that's basically what I did for the whole entire year. And I'm still working on it because that's a 17-year living in a house could
accumulation of 17 years of
4 years.
stuff.
Yeah, exactly. So that's what I did. I've started focusing on cleaning my house up, about reorganizing things I needed to get rid of, reorganizing how I eat, because you also know I'm not a prepper. I just can't do that. It's just not me. So I had to find a lot of ways to learn to do things different than most people do, because I can't sit here on Sunday and prep all my meals for the week. It's not in my personality. It's just not who I am. I mean, I probably can't tell you what I'm eating for dinner tonight.
Well,
I can tell you what proteins.
That's the creative person in you, because I find that a majority of people actually do prefer the prep because they got a job during the week.
Yeah, and I get that.
What I want to ask you with regards to this step here, when you get to the point where you realize this might take a lot longer than I thought, the weight doesn't just drop off straight like in our fantasy minds. Sometimes it goes up, like it's gonna be a ride. How valuable was it for you to have a simplified strategy where I didn't have you doing everything possible that you could do around fitness? I really dial it down to what is the bare minimum you need to do that you can sustain over time that will get your results. How helpful was that? And B, how helpful was it to have a strategic cheat day built into the plan to get you through?
I know for a fact that without the cheat day, since that's the last thing that you said, and it just sparked in my head, without a cheat day, I wouldn't be able to do this. I don't know how people do it without a cheat day, because we're human beings. I need a cupcake once in a while. I don't know about you. Or I need some a bowl full of strawberries and blueberries with some yogurt once in a while. I need that stuff once in a while because I'm human. I'm never going to be perfect. There's no such thing as perfect. If there was such thing as perfect, we all wouldn't be in this place having this problem right now, because we'd all be eating perfect lifestyles and we would have been doing that our whole lives. But I know I need the cheat day. I know that if I didn't keep it simple for almost the whole entire year that I was doing it in the beginning of the year, there's no way I would have made it, because it would have got too complicated. And even now, today, sometimes I talk to people and they'll ask me questions, and I apologize, everybody. There's somebody walking back and forth in front of my house driving my dog nuts, of course, right now. But I don't think that without the simplicity that it would have worked at all. Now, can I deviate a little bit from that? Do I? Yes, because you know that, because I post meals to help people with trying to come up with more creative ways to eat, but still stay inside them.
Well, yeah, you're still keeping it simple. What I mean by simple is I distill it down to, okay, what are the big rocks that are going to give you the result? It's not saying, Kimberly, I need you to get 10,000 steps every day. You've never heard that from me.
No,
ever.
No. And in fact, and you know darn well that for me, I couldn't work out for a while. It just didn't exist on my radar because of a lot of complications that were going on.
Right. So we prioritize the nutrition. And it's a very simple recipe as to what you need to get at each meal to get the results, to get your body burning body fat. And outside of that, it's not complicated. I don't have you doing, 100 different shakes and supplements and this garbage. And, I need you to work out every day. That doesn't work when push comes to shove.
Exactly.
And
still, I mean, I think the most complicated thing out of all the things I do, and it's not even complicated, but to a lot of people, when they ask me, Every once in a while, somebody will ask me about my eating. They'll say, but you're so picky about everything. I said, really, the only thing I'm very, very picky about is weighing my meat. That's it. I need to know how many, except for when I'm out, because you can't control that.
Yeah.
But I'm going to put the scale down there and figure out how much meat's going on my plate, how many ounces are there. It's just a habit, and I probably will never change that.
And I like that in the sense that with many women, I find that they get too little. They accidentally get too little protein because they've been trained that they're supposed to eat like little rabbits and every little, like a child's plate. No, you need to get enough protein. And so I'm actually a big advocate of weighing it. You don't have to. At some point you could eyeball it, but if you find yourself getting hungry over time, you just might be under eating. In which case, why not pull out the scale when you can? Not at the restaurant, but 90% of the time you should be eating at home anyway.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the sheet says 3 to 5 ounces is the right amount, because it's been a while since I've read it. So
4 ounces is going to get you 30 grams of protein, which is what we want to aim for minimum.
The 4 ounces is where I was at. And I was having issues in the last even couple of months of me figuring that I was hungry, and I kept thinking, I'm not hungry. What is bothering me? Well, I couldn't find anything that was bothering me, and I kept going through all the things that might be causing that. Am I not drinking enough water? Am I, a lot of little things I would look at. And then I finally realized that maybe it's my protein, and I upped it to the high point, and I'm not having a problem anymore. It's like, it doesn't take that much to figure that out.
To 5 ounces or 4?
Yeah, to the 5. Because I went from the 4 to 5, because at one point I was at 3 when I started.
Three's too little, 4 is minimum. What many people probably don't know about you is that you take HRT. I take HRT as well. The testosterone can drive hunger for protein because it also helps with muscle protein synthesis. And I too, after going on, excuse me, I'm losing my voice today. After going on HRT, had to increase my protein intake. And it was driving hunger for that.
But I still stick to what I know is supposed to be on that sheet. And honestly, it's probably sitting here on the wall somewhere. If I had any sense, I'd take it down if I had a question. But I'm on such autopilot now that I don't think about looking at that anymore. And I think there's another mistake that people make, because I kept that sheet out for probably 6 months. Because every once in a while I'd be thinking about something I'm eating or what I was doing, and I'd look at it and think, oh, well, why was I doing that or thinking that? Because it takes a while to get all that stuff in your head and it to become a habit.
Absolutely. And over time, absolutely, you should understand what you're doing. There should come a point where you get dropped out of the nest and you can fly, and you get it now. And that is the goal. The goal is not to be dependent on me.
Because the other thing I won't deny at all whatsoever is it's that staying with you on a maintenance plan on a monthly basis for a very long time has been worth a ton more than I thought it would be. Because in the beginning, I didn't think it would be any big deal to do the 6 weeks and learn this and go on my way. No. I think we're, as human beings, need accountability for a while from something or somebody somehow.
I always say, in my experience, that is when people fall off. They get overconfident. That's why I say I'm nervous when people are overconfident at any point.
Yeah.
So when you assume that, okay, this is the time, well, if you don't have a track record for this being the time, what's the probability of this actually being the time? And then 2,
I don't know.
that the maintenance plan is not about me necessarily looking at every single meal, but I do. It's about when you reach these tripping points. And I can't predict when those tripping points are going to be for you. The whole point is to have a lifeline in place for when it arrives. I remember you going to the restaurant for the first time. Having someone to look at the menu and work through it with you.
Yes.
What am I going to order? Important question.
Well, a menu will confuse you sometimes because you look at it and there's so much stuff on there You don't realize how accommodating a restaurant will be until you have to ask them to be. Because we live our whole lives going in there, okay, this is what's on the menu. I order this, we take it, we don't argue with it, we eat what's on the plate. I don't know whoever told it. I don't know how I got that in my head or where I got that from, but that is just not what I do. Not even close to what I do anymore. And you know darn well I retrained a restaurant to completely make a bowl a completely different way than they're supposed to make it. They see me and they know, oh, here she comes.
I always say
fix this order.
it's extremely valuable to have worked in a restaurant at some point in your life. For people that don't understand that, it's actually really normal. When I serve tables, a huge number of people coming in and out of that restaurant every day had unique dietary needs, whether it was allergies or what have you.
Yes.
And there's a modification button for a reason. So it's totally normal. The only one who's really thinking that deeply about it is you. The restaurant's used to doing it. The servers are used to doing it. The chefs are used to doing these things.
Yep.
If you do go to a restaurant where they're pushing you back on that, that's not a restaurant.
Yep.
Move
Exactly.
on.
Exactly. I just don't. I'm always been one of those people. I don't like to create a lot of issues. I just like to go along with the flow and stuff. But guess what? I'm not like that anymore.
Nope.
I'm not even close to like that. And I already knew that before I started with you, that I didn't want to be part of the flow anymore.
Yeah. Who wants to be normal? We're sick.
But
Not doing well.
it isn't even that. It's everything. Like I don't want to be part of the flow. I don't want to be part of the medical system. I don't want to be part of all kinds of crazy things that I feel so different about than I did 2 years ago.
Agree. If you look at the rates of depression, anxiety, chronic disease in this country, it tells you that that's what is normal. That's where the flow takes you. And I want to live a fulfilling,
Yes.
full life that's just over brimming with joy. And I can't
Yes.
live that way. If I want these things, I have.
Like, do we want to just live? Like, do we want to just survive, or do we want to live?
I want to thrive, baby.
Yes, much more than what I was 2 years ago. My only regret in life is that I didn't learn how to do this sooner.
I'll take that.
It is my only regret in life, and I don't think we should have regrets in life. We should live, but this is one thing that I wish I would have learned sooner, much sooner.
Well, I hope everyone takes that to heart. If you haven't gotten started yet, what the heck are you waiting for? So,
well, just think about all the crazy things that I did when I first started. When I was like, okay, what am I going to do? And you carry around emergency beef sticks in my purse even now today.
Well, I want to get on to the next part, which includes that, which is when we have these crisis of meaning moments in life, which include hospital visits, whether for you, your spouse, a friend, car accidents, God forbid, divorces, breakups, job losses, name it all.
Yep.
Going to hit that point several times throughout your life. We're all going to experience catastrophe. And that is not the time to be making a decision about what you need to eat, what you should be doing. You need to love your future self by taking the time in the beginning when you are excited, like Kimberly did, about the possibility, about the future. That's the time where you have the energy and the clarity of mind to sit down and come up with the game plan. What's the travel kit going to look like? What needs to be in there? What am I going to do when X, Y, Z happens? God forbid. But what am I going to do to prepare myself? So I want you to talk a little bit about that and how you prepared yourself, because you had plenty of opportunities to do this.
Well, I'd say that was when I first started discussing that with you, was when I started really preparing myself for that, because I didn't want to find out something was going on. And that it sounds so silly, but I just didn't want to mess up one meal at that time. Not one, not even just a dinner because something happened. It was just where my mindset was at the time. Am I still like that? Yeah, I am. I still am very picky about that and don't like to deviate at all from what I'm supposed to be doing 6 days out of the week. But when you and I first started discussing that, that's when I started carrying around the beef sticks in my purse. Now, did I remember to put my almonds in there? No, I forgot.
Well,
But
if you
the beef
have
sticks were in there.
beef sticks that have enough fat, you don't have to.
Yeah, but that was in there without me ever thinking about it. And if you remember, a friend of mine, I had to drive them to the hospital that was very far away, like a couple hours from here,
I remember.
because their husband was put in the hospital out of nowhere, very far away, and they can't drive. And so I got in the car to drive down there and turn around and come back, which was like a good 6-7 hour drive for me. I was so worried about what I was going to eat for dinner. And I remember at the last minute telling you, even because I was getting ready to walk out the door and I couldn't send you my dinner that night. I said, oh, it's okay. My beef sticks are in the purse. I'm good to go where I'm going. Just know you're not going to see my dinner, because I had forgot they were even in there until I started trying to navigate what I was going to do about eating dinner. And that's what I ate for dinner on the way on the drive, because and it was perfectly fine. And then when I looked in there and realized I probably should have had a few almonds in there for the fat, and they weren't in there, I said, you know what? This is way better than the choices I could have made. And I made a tiny little mistake like that.
And also, almonds can be purchased at any gas station, pretty much. So those are things.
You know me, I don't stop driving.
If you need, well, there's times where if you're on the road and you need to stop, there's generally a place that have almonds. It's not, so that can be like you're hunting and gathering. And that's how you can wrap your brain around it. Where can I gather the food?
But if you know me, when I'm driving something like that, I ain't growing.
Yeah, but you had meat sticks.
If I got where I had to, I would have. Yes.
And there's plenty of fat. There's no concern there. The point.
But it completely kept me full. I got home and I was fine. Didn't even think about dinner or being hungry, and I was fine. And that was very early in what, that was before I was doing maintenance plans with you. I think that was during my first 6 weeks.
Well, you had a surgery during your first 6 weeks. So
too.
What I want to get at here is this is not the time to be making decisions. Like you just said, you got to call friends in the hospital. Your brain's not functioning. It's not thinking about, oh, where do I get the almonds? It's thinking about getting to the friend, and you had your food in the purse ready to go. So you didn't have to think about it. It was just there. The other thing is, no matter what you're doing, it's really important, especially at this phase, you realize the significance of having a good strategy. Because if you have a strategy that's solely dependent on exercise for you to get results, you're not planning for the times where you might not be able to exercise. She had a surgery that totally knocked her out from exercise, but what it did not knock her out of is eating. You know,
I remember waking up for that surgery and them telling me to drink the 7-Up because they wanted the gas to move in me. And I looked at my husband and I said, I'm so sorry, but somebody is going to have to find a different way to handle this, because I am not drinking that sugar. And he was like, Kimberly, you're sick. I said, I don't care. They need to find another answer. They actually went and found me a sugar-free soda, and I gave in to that just because to make them happy. But at least they went and fixed the problem to the best they could.
Sugar-free,
and I understood that.
Sugar-free is the answer. I think we'll have to do another episode entirely on the abysmal state of the healthcare system, though.
Yeah, we won't talk about that right now. Not at all, because I've been navigating a bunch of nonsense with that. So,
but the point is there's this myth that was perpetuated by marketing companies that you just need to move more and eat less. And the idea is we want to blame the exercise because we want you to continue purchasing our fake diet foods and our ultra processed, Franken foods, because that's healthy for our bottom line, not you. So we can convince you that you just need to exercise more. They win, you lose. The reality is there will be times in your life where exercise is not an option. And so you need to have the diet squared away, the diet that's going to drive the results and protect your muscle tissue during those times. Otherwise, you lose. You lose before you even start. So the strategy is so important.
We'll go back to what happened when I came home from the surgery. I really didn't have an appetite. And not eating isn't good either. It's like, my husband gives me a hard time about that. He's like, you insistently have to have 3 meals a day. And I'm like, yep, I do. Because a lot of people, and I was like him, will skip meals, eat a really big breakfast, say I had plenty, but a lot of us don't understand, and I didn't even understand when I first started this, is that I'm not giving my body the proper nutrition it needs and the proper protein it needs on a regular basis. I'm just skipping over that like it doesn't even matter. And I didn't want to eat when I first came home, and you know that. And luckily, I had enough stuff in my head by then, because I was getting close to 4 weeks or 5 weeks, I think, when this all happened, because I was just about ready to work out. And I had enough information in my head from that diet plan, from those couple of weeks that I was working on it, to know that there were things that I could do, that I could eat, that I could stomach eating, like taking broth and chicken and putting it together. Where most people are going to jump on, oh, I want some chicken noodle soup out of a can. And I'm like,
have you been
that's what my brain wanted to do. That's what my brain wanted to do at the time. But because I had enough information in there, I knew how to fix that chicken noodle soup into the right thing.
Kimberly
Personally do it.
Kimberly must have been sneaking onto my phone calls. So there's some nuance here that I want to clarify. The older we get, the more important it is to get protein down, to protect that muscle tissue, to avoid frailty, to maintain insulin sensitivity. And if you don't know what that is, go to my Facebook page and learn up. But just know that insulin sensitivity is associated with longevity. Okay. It helps you to prevent all the chronic diseases that are taking out modern day man. Okay. So that's one. It's really important. And that's why it's important to eat. And an easy way to do that is a shake. But what I will say is, if you get sick, or if you have a surgery which is making you feel kind of sick, it's okay to miss a meal during that time. Because fasting is actually more conducive to healing than doing what the majority of people do. And you just mentioned that as well. I'm going to go have what I had when I was a baby or a child. Mommy brought me my chicken noodle, and she brought me my toast with the jelly and and that. I'd rather you fast than do that, as long as we're not continuously doing that, because eventually you do need to protect the muscle. The muscle will start to fall away. It will start to be catabolized, broken down for energy. So you don't want to make it a habit, but I'd rather you do that than go towards the junk food, the comfort food.
Or go back to what I grew up with, a nurse in the house, which in those days and age, they were doing what they thought was the right thing to do.
Absolutely.
And the first thing she would tell me is the BRAT diet's best for you if you're not feeling well.
Yeah.
So today, if somebody told me I needed to eat bananas, rice, apples, or toast, I'd look at them and go, no.
Or the saltine crackers.
Bananas, rice, apples, and toast when I don't feel good.
Yeah.
It's like, and to me, I think that broth, and we're talking quality broth, not some of the junk we see in the store, and be very careful about what's in the label and what we see in it. That's the first thing that I'm going to go to now if I don't feel good, and add some cut up chicken to it that's already cooked, or something that's going to give me a little protein somewhere until I start feeling better. And my husband was here and threw a bunch of chicken in the oven, and I ate a lot of broth and chicken for a day or two until I really started feeling eating again and drinking my shakes again. And it took a day or two, but that goes back to saying that you need somebody to be there
You didn't
when
gain
things like
weight.
that happen. You do. You need somebody to be there, and you need somebody that's going to back you up, because even today, even though my husband doesn't completely understand everything I eat and what I do, because it's just not how he thinks. If I remotely even start complaining that I'm hungry or whatever, he'll say, but you know what you need to do. He'll remind me that I know what I need to do, or tell me you don't want to do that, or because I don't care how long you do something like this, you think stupid things sometimes. You got to control what your brain's thinking and talk your brain out of it. Tell your brain that whatever you're thinking, you're not going to get that choice today.
You have to be prepared that in times of suffering, your brain is going to go into chaos. And that's why I talk about the importance of planning when your brain is not in a state of chaos. The importance of knowing what to do ahead of time so that you can go into the emotions. You were in the military. You train as you fight. There's a reason that every day when nothing's going down, you're not in the field of battle, we're paying attention to detail. We're going through the motions as if we were performing in a field of battle. Because muscle memory, mental muscle memory, actual muscle memory will kick in when you can't think straight. It's the quote. We fall to the level of our training, and everything that leads up to those moments in time is preparing you for that. I always say your journey doesn't happen until your first emergency occurs.
Well, and honestly, some of the greatest growth we get is through suffering that we do. It really is.
Choosing to stand in the face of it and dig your heels in and move forward anyway. That is growth. And then once you do have that emergency, and you get through it, and yeah, it was hard, and you forgot the almonds, whatever, you pretty much stayed the course. Now you have a reference point. Now, next time something happens, you don't feel helpless. You cannot lie to yourself and say that you can't get through this, because you can look back to that first crisis and say, I did that. It wasn't easy. It wasn't comfortable, but I did it.
There are people that probably think I'm silly because I still carry those things in my purse.
I go back to, this is where
they're just a comfort thing to me now, and knowing that they're there. If something happens, I'm at least one meal okay.
It's intelligent. I don't care if you never served, because people often go, oh, you served in the military, there's a certain way that you think, there's a certain way that you do things. Learn from people that you do not understand, because you can take some of the things that they are doing and apply it to your own life. In the military, if we go on a training op or a mission, we bring MREs ready to eat. And what I have people do is create their own MRE, but it's compliant. It doesn't have the cookies and the garbage that military MREs have in those.
Well, and you can't say that everybody in the military learned these things, because there are plenty of people in the military that I was around that they just don't get it. Even when they've been in there, they don't get it. It's a mindset you have to have.
What they don't get,
you have to make.
What they don't get, and this, anybody who's ever succeeded in any area of their life, whether they had a military career, whether they maybe built a business, or which amazing professionals, everything that you did to be successful in that area that you kind of compartmentalized, out of that box, and realize that you learned a principle. A principle can be applied all across the board, to your relationships, to your bank account, to the food in your cabinet, to your exercise plan. The way we do anything should be the way we do everything.
You could probably let your brain just take one thing, one idea, one thought, and let it run with it. It's a choice you make to not let it do that. You have to make that choice. If today, let's just say I get hungry and I start thinking about Reese's peanut butter cups or chocolate cake or something that's really important to me. And I can't say any of those things are really important to me, but they're the first things that came to my head. Let's just say that I start thinking about that one thing. If I don't choose to get my brain out of that thinking process, I'm probably going to eat that Reese's peanut butter cup, because I'm got to get my brain to choose not to think about that anymore and find something else to do. Go drink an 8-ounce glass of water, chew on a piece of salt, do something to replace what you're thinking so that you're not thinking about that anymore. It's,
Yeah.
do we want our brains to control us or us to control our brains?
I posted the quote about the border collie. Your brain's like a border collie. If you don't give it a job to do, it'll eat up the whole couch. So, when you find your brain eating up the couch, give it a new job to do.
I have no idea.
and then the other thing I posted is that the problem is not that your brain thinks something. The example I used in the post was, your problem is not that you think you're worthless. The problem,
But you believe that.
you listen to it.
Yep.
The problem is not that you thinking about having a Reese's peanut butter cup. The problem is that you're listening to it.
Yep. And sometimes I'm not going to disagree that there isn't times that it's hard to stop listening to that stuff. You just got to replace it with something. You got to find something else to do and move on from there. Just do it. Just find something else. What
I call that is, not just me, I mean, anyone in the self-improvement space gets this. It's a pattern interrupt. You've got a bad pattern that you're running. Find a way to interrupt it.
Yep.
And there's 1,000,001 ways to do that. You can get creative about how you're going to do that.
Yep. Exactly.
I don't care if it's jump up and down like a crazy person for 5 minutes.
Well, and for me personally, because you know this, I had a hard time drinking water when I started. It was very hard for me. It's not anymore. Do I have bad days with it sometimes? Yes, because it's a personality thing with me that I fight, like that I need to go drink that water. And I've been like that my whole life. And so I'm always fighting that. But what I found is that if I get thoughts in my head about eating Reese's peanut butter cups or chocolate chip cookies or whatever it is, if I went and drank an 8-ounce glass of water, not only did it get rid of that thought, because now my focus was to go get the glass of water, but it also got me drinking more water, something I needed desperately to learn how to do. Now, am I better at that today? Yes, much.
So you took a negative and you used it as a trigger to do something positive.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, isn't that amazing? That's called alchemy. You just turn base metal into gold.
Mm-hmm.
Or
if you don't do that, then I don't know. Everything in your life is going to control you. If you don't find a way to replace it with something, you're going to allow everything in your life to control you. And it isn't just food. I mean, negative thoughts can take you to places that you don't want to be. Yeah. And I'm very aware of that because I've been around enough people like that.
Well, and then you lead a life that's no longer in your control. You're just sort of waiting for the wind to tell you which way to go, and you never really end up anywhere that you want to be. And that goes back to, you have to be willing to be uncomfortable, embrace the discomfort, and then turn whatever that is into something good, rather than looking at it as an inconvenience. How can I turn this thought, this thing, this challenge into an opportunity? How can I flip it? How can I reframe it in this moment, rather than going, oh, I wish this thing weren't here? Well, it's going to stay there. That's all you're saying is, I wish this thing weren't here, because that's all you're thinking about.
Well, not only that, but if you're comfortable, you're not changing.
Exactly.
You're changing anything, because you have definitely got to be uncomfortable to be changing.
I try to tell
to some point, I think we all need to be there as much as possible in an uncomfortable place, because it helps us grow.
Well, it's like building muscle. You don't build muscle if you're not challenging the muscle. If you're going in, I'm just going to do 2 pounds and fling that around every, 3 days, you're not getting.
Right now, I just started doing something that I don't know if you know about it or not, because I don't know if we talked about this, is I just started learning how to throw a cornhole bag. I know it sounds like the stupidest thing in the world that,
I
how
saw-
to just throw this cornhole bag in a hole, no big deal.
I saw a post.
Let me tell you what, it's not that easy. And it takes constant, consistent practice to do that.
Yeah.
It's no different than eating. Everything we do, whether it's, and I really thought I was walking into something that was like, oh, I'm going to throw this beanbag in a hole. How hard can that be? It was a lot harder than I thought. And it was a lot more competitive than I thought. And I've practiced way more than I expected myself to do because of that. Same thing with our eating and working out and everything else. If we don't make consistent practice or a consistency out of it, it's never going to work.
Everything is a learned skill. And if you telescope back in your life at anything that you learned in the beginning, you were not competent at that thing. The first time you got into a car and turned the key, you were not competent at driving that car. It felt awkward. It felt clumsy. It felt like it took every ounce of your attention until one day not that I condone this, one day you're running your cell phone, don't eat a bagel if you're on my plan, eating a bagel and driving at the same time without thinking about it.
Mm-hmm.
Same with walking. Can you imagine if every time you face plant it when you were learning to walk and you start listening to this voice in the head that says you're not good enough, you're never going to be cut out for walking, this is just stupid, you might as well quit while you're ahead, you wouldn't have walked.
Well, same thing like we were talking about trying to find other creative outlets and stuff when you're starting to eat. Like if I had any sense, I would have went back to playing cornhole when I first started eating, right? Because it would have gave me a different creative outlet to work on.
And it's a good
I didn't think about
distraction.
that at the time. Huh?
It's a good distraction.
Yes. And I didn't think about it at the time.
It gives your brain a bone to chew on, and it's a good bone to chew on.
Well, and to me, anything I'm doing, especially in the evening, late in the evening, because I know it sounds silly to some people, but anything I'm doing late in the evening after dinner or whatever, if I'm up moving, because if I'm not working out, then I'm not moving. I'm sitting, I'm talking, I'm watching TV, whatever. If I'm up at night doing something like that, practicing something like that, then I'm moving. I'm not just sitting. And I don't know how most people feel my age, because I have a handful of people my age around me, but a lot of my friends are in their 30s and 40s, believe it or not. It's crazy. But you start aching as you get older. And the more you sit, the worse it gets. So we're going to go back to, we need to lift those weights and do all those other things too, because if we're not doing those, we're just going to start hurting more and more as we age. And I wish I would have kept working out, because I used to do it when I was younger, and why I stopped, I don't know.
Yeah, it's the question it's either the question is to get stronger or decay. I mean, there's really only your two options. You're either building up, or you're breaking down. And it's a perfect example of that. Well, listen, Kimberly,
I just think we all sit way too much anymore.
I think we covered a lot of ground here. That's another topic for another day. I think it would be a great topic for another day, but I appreciate you coming on. I appreciate you providing such valuable insight, and I'll leave it like I always leave it, to be continued.
Yep. Have a good day.